Hey guys, welcome to Finally Clicked, the podcast where we discuss business, leadership, and personal development. My name is Margaret Smith, and I'm the Director of Operations for Pickett Street Properties, a real estate team out of Bothell, Washington. And I'll be here every week with our owner and team leader, Jesse D. Moore. We'll be digging into concepts and ideas that have helped us both personally and professionally, and you'll also get a chance to hear from local and national experts that we know provide massive value to get to the point where it all finally clicks. It's one of those days. It's a Finally Clicked podcast day with Jesse D. Moore and Margaret Smith.
Hello.
It's an exciting day where we get to interview your brother, Reed Moore.
Yes, my younger bald brother, Reed Moore. I shouldn't say bald because he has hair. I don't know any sensitive. He shouldn't be. He's a good-looking man.
Yeah.
Good-looking branded baseball cap. He was branded to the hilt today.
Well, did you notice he was branded out? Yeah.
He was branded on
I
his
wouldn't
shirt.
be surprised if he had socks and
probably
pants
has an
to match.
RMG tattoo.
Mm-hmm. I think that is actually a requirement.
Yeah, so Reed Moore is, I refer to him affectionately as my brother from another mother. I
actually wouldn't be surprised if you're related.
We're both from Montana.
What's his middle name?
What are you saying about Montanans? We're not
inbred. You guys
inbred.
are crazy.
And Reed is a very successful businessman. He has a 7th level real estate team. Mm-hmm. He was part of 5 Doors Real Estate Network for a while, and he has several other businesses, and we get to talk all about it. So it's a good time.
All about it.
And a few things I want to preface. I make some weird analogies in this
when do you not?
interview. And so if you want some reference points or you have time to research a little bit before.
Okay, yeah, it's a good point.
You might want to research Chernobyl, which is a nuclear reaction disaster in Russia that happened in 1986. Because, that makes sense in a business analogy. Mm-hmm. And then 2 is I make reference to Reed Moore being like Nick Nolte, and what I meant was Gary Busey. And I always mix up those 2 actors. So if you research Nick Nolte and Gary Busey and you put them side by side, there was a point in time where they look like identical. They're doppelgangers.
Really?
The problem is that at some point Gary Busey got in a terrible motorcycle accident and had a traumatic brain injury that made him kind of loopy the rest of his life. And the thing that he does that's kind of hilarious is he'll just say weird acronyms. So he'll be like fear, and he'll be like fear, false evidence appearing real. But there's no context. So it's just like
perfect.
You'll be like, hey Gary, what's up? And he's like, fear, false evidence appearing real. And I'm like, okay, God, but he looks at life through his own, and then defines it in his own way. Okay. And that's what I was trying to say with Reed. And then I said Nick Nolte, who was a totally different actor and didn't have a traumatic brain injury and doesn't do the very thing that I was trying to refer to. You know what? Sometimes you're just along for the ride.
Go for the
flow.
I'm
talking.
Yeah,
okay?
Go with it.
So,
I have to say though, one of the things I like about Reed is that he does remind me of you. And just, as much as we laugh and jest about it, I love their team, and we've always talked about how the culture of Pickett Street and the Reed Moore Group is fairly similar. And so it was a really interesting conversation.
Let's get into it. Margaret, I'm excited today for our latest Finally Clicked podcast episode, primarily because my little brother is on the show. Yes. I have so much hope for him. He seems to be doing okay on his own, but it's just nice to look behind myself every once in a while and see Reed Moore smiling back at me.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. I've always been envious of my big brother's outstanding hair. That's why I'm wearing a hat.
People keep commenting on Jesse's hair. So
I know it's kind of becoming a problem. Mm-hmm. But actually, Reed, you are from Montana. Am I mistaken?
No, I am. I'm from the Flathead Valley. Yes, I'm Montana.
You're from a much prettier part of Montana than where I'm from.
Yes, right in the middle of the Rockies, not in the middle of what is it? Nothingness? Just
yeah. No, where you grew up is arguably one of the most beautiful spots on earth, I would argue. Flathead Lake is just unbelievable.
Oh, it's wonderful. Yeah, I'm partial to this. Right now I'm standing in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, so kind of all part of that same area, and it's just kind of spoiled this time of year.
And so I know let's give people a quick history on Reed Moore, who is actually not my brother, just to clear things up. Reed and I were introduced through some circles at Keller Williams years ago. We hit it off instantly, perhaps being a product of Montana, just similar mindset, similar way of thinking.
Yeah.
And then, so we've maintained a relationship, and today you're our guest. So let's talk about, from Montana, you end up in Alaska after your military service, right?
That's right. Yep.
And then you're in Alaska for how the heck do you end up in Alaska?
That was weird.
Yeah.
And
So
can I just ask, like, in the beginning, did you spend as much time alone on a horse as Jesse did? Was that at all?
No, that's one of those weird things that people from Eastern Montana do.
Okay.
You mean people didn't ask you if you rode your horse to school?
No, we walked and rode motorbikes and shot things.
I've been asked more times than I can count if I rode a horse to school.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. No, I went to Alaska in the military, actually. So when joined the Air Force, got out of high school, didn't know what I wanted to do, decided, hey, like I'll give this Air Force thing a shot. And went into telecommunications. So I learned cryptography and fiber optics and just all kinds of cool stuff. And they shipped me to Alaska. And so once I got to Alaska, Alaska is kind of like the ultimate of outdoor experiences. And so we got up there and it was pretty cool. And so when I got out of the military, I realized I liked working with people more than I liked working with things. And real estate ended up being kind of a natural segue to that. So I went, I got paid every 2 weeks in the military. And then all of a sudden I have a wife and a baby and I'm on commission income and I've never sold anything in my life. And, welcome to real estate. So I did that for 6 years. And at the 6-year mark, some really hard things started happening. And my wife and I found ourselves in a place where ultimately we were $800,000 in debt, which was fun to be in your mid-20s and to be, that far over your head. And I just really had to get real and have some hard conversations with myself. So at the time, we had this business that was failing. I had real estate that sort of paid the bills, and I worked with youth and young adults at a local church. We had grown like a youth ministry from 6 kids to 120 kids. And I just all of a sudden realized, from the outside looking in, I look like I'm doing everything well, right? People are like, wow, look at all the things you can do. But you just, inside when you're just like, you either look the part or you might be a little better than average at something, but it started eating at me and it started eating at kind of every area of my life. And I decided, you know what, if I'm going to do something that's truly going to make an impact, I have to focus and I have to build something and I have to build people because that's what I was put on this earth to do. And that was the beginning of my real estate business. So I went from selling about $3 million worth of real estate each and every year, which, like, if you do the quick math, it kind of pays the bills. That's about it. And that first year I sold 9.6 million and then 15 and 30 and 35 and 60 and 75 and all the way up to last year was about 114 million. So that's been the trajectory of me in business, really with this purpose of growing a business that I can use as a platform to build people.
And so did you start in Wasilla or did you start in Anchorage?
I started in Anchorage. Yep.
And then did you expand to Wasilla?
We did. We expanded to Wasilla and then eventually Homer, Alaska, which is, a funny story about that. So I have an agent down there and he sat down with us it was about a year ago and he's like, I don't think my market's big enough for me to hit my goals, right? And we hear that stuff all the time in real estate. Like, okay, yeah, your market's the only one.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So we looked at it and we're like, oh, the population's like 6,000 people. We did the math and we're like, yeah, for you to hit your goals, you'd have to sell every house. Like, okay. So so he's moving to one of our other locations. So we went from there to launch in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, and then Spokane, Washington as well. So we're currently in 5 locations.
And you make that sound like it was no big thing, but
it's terrible.
I imagine transitioning from Alaska to Coeur d'Alene was no easy feat.
No, it wasn't. It's funny because you look back, when people write books on leadership and all this stuff, I'm just convinced that they fumble through and then they look back and they're like, oh, these are the 5 steps that I did right on accident. And then they write a book, The 5 Steps to Not Sucking at Something. Right? Like that's just actually kind of how it goes. So that was my experience is I started doing some things. My wife is the oldest of four sisters. So she's kind of like mom's sister. And, she's 3,500 miles away from all of her sisters. They start having kids. And so that's just kind of starts to create some rub. And, she came to me and said, I really think we need to be back closer to family. And I said, I need 3 to 5 years to build this so we can walk away and I'll get you back closer to family. So what we started doing, and it was just totally unintentional, is I started, I would go on a vacation. I would be completely incognito for a week. Like you can't get in touch with me. And then the next week I would just kind of be a little bit available and I'd come back and, things had broken, people had freaked out. But the pattern kind of was people freaked out for about 3 days. And then they realized, wait a second, Reed doesn't really help us with these things anyway. Like we know what we're doing. So I would go away again, a couple months later and be off the grid. And then, like very few things would break, or I would come back and people were like, oh, hey, welcome back. And then they would just go back to it. I thought, okay, that's kind of cool. And so the next year I went away for an entire month and I came back and there were a few things that broke. But in general, like things were kind of in place. And so a buddy of mine, we used to go out to lunch every week and he said, you know what you're doing? You're stress testing your business. And if you continue to go away on purpose, you'll be able to go away for longer and longer and longer periods of time. And so the light bulb went off and I realized, oh, this thing I just kind of fumbled into is a really smart way to stress test a business. Because if you go away for a week, the world's probably not going to end. A lot of people, they're like, awesome, I have other things, and they hand somebody the keys and they walk away for a year and they come back and there's nothing left, right? So that was kind of the pattern. And we got to just a little over the 3-year mark. And we just realized that from that point, we were actually just procrastinating because anything that could be done had been done. And everything else we're just going to have to fix whether we stayed or left.
And so then you moved to outside of Coeur d'Alene, right? You moved to a market. I mean, how does that work when you start to analyze where you're going to move to? Like you didn't know you were moving to Coeur d'Alene, did you? Right away?
No, so Coeur d'Alene actually happened as an expansion before we moved here. And, it's funny because I'd like to tell you it's super, super intentional. The reality is we happened to be at an event and Idaho was pretty backwoods at the time. And within about a couple weeks of the state changing some regulation when it came to internet marketing, we had happened to find out about it. And that happened to be something that was in our wheelhouse. And so we were able to launch into Coeur d'Alene really at kind of the first wave of people being able to do business kind of in, it's not really a new way, but to Idaho at the time, it was a little bit of a new way of doing business. So we launched Coeur d'Alene. I couldn't find the right person to launch with, right? I was down here, I was talking to people and just couldn't find the right fit, but I found a guy who was just awesome, right? Like he was like my other brother. And I said, look, I don't think this is a great fit, but I'll help you build a team. And you just take these leads that I'm going to be able to generate and give me a percentage of them and we'll live happily ever after. And so that's actually was our entrance into Coeur d'Alene. And we did that for a couple of years and he made money, I made money. And then we actually launched the team a couple of years later.
And did he stay with you after you launched?
No, so he always kept his own branding and he kept doing his thing. And so about another 2 years after that, we separated out. I actually helped him do the type of lead generation that I did. And I just like, here's yours. Now, you cover the checks and I'm going to go do this. And he's just stayed a really good friend. It was amazing experience. I think a few times in life you get to be in a relationship with somebody that you don't know for very long, but just the way that they act and hold themselves and run their business, there was just never an issue with integrity. Right? And there was never an issue with, being small-minded or scarcity. And just to be able to walk through an entire 4-year period with somebody where the mindset was always, really good and all that it was a very cool experience. So we stayed very good friends.
Also, around that time, were you an investor in 5 Doors at that time?
Yeah. So there were three other guys that I had teamed up with, and this whole idea of expansion was really starting to get a stride. It went from being like we're all scratching our heads, thinking we want to grow our businesses and we want to grow outside of one location. What do we do? And it was just the Wild West. It was absolutely it was a crap show is what it was. And so as we went through that, I had expanded already. A couple of the other guys had expanded, and we said, hey, if we're going to do this at a really big level, let's do it together and let's bring our skill sets together. And so it was a really great idea of taking multiple talented people and bringing their brains together. And so we spent about 5 years working really hard on that. And I learned, it was amazing. It was an incredible learning experience because I feel like I learned for the first time about what business looks like outside of the bootstrap entrepreneur do-it-yourself kind of world, right? So there was a time in my business where I would tell people all partnerships, the only partnership in life is good is marriage, and even that one's hard, right? And so I just steer people away from partnerships. And what I learned was that as you grow and as you mature in your people skills, specifically your ability to have conflict, right? To actually engage people in productive conflict, you start realizing that partnerships can be massively powerful. They're hard, but when done right and when done well, they can produce way bigger results. So we had just, I got to experience some of that. I got to experience what it was like to work with people at a very high level that had skill sets that I probably just would never have. And it was an incredible experience. And we got to a place to where I got to put on my investor hat for a period of time. And then it was really time for all hands on deck for us to all jump in and roll up our sleeves and do it again. And at that point, I just looked and I realized, like, man, my passion is going in a different direction. And I'd promised these guys, we'd all promise each other, we won't be passive investors, right? We will put our hands to the plow. And I just said, hey guys, like, I'm not there anymore. And so graciously, we were able to find somebody who did want that. And I exited, I think it was like March of last year.
Okay. And then with RMG, your real estate brand, we talk a little bit about, a lot of our audience is Keller Williams friendly, so they may know the terms, but there's a term called seventh level where you've basically set up, you're passively making income from your business, your real estate business. Are you at that level now?
I am. I'm a little bit of a mythical unicorn in the world of real estate, which is kind of cool, actually. So some days more than others.
So tell people what that looks like for you.
Yeah. So at this point, RMG, which is the real estate company I told you guys about earlier, it has a CEO. And when I say CEO, not just by title, this person actually can sign for lines of credit, can sell the company. Like, they can do all the things that an actual CEO can do. We have a VP of growth and a COO that run the company. So the three of them run the company. And one of the interesting things that was a little bit of an aha moment last year was I stepped back and I realized, if you're familiar with the cash flow quadrant, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners are, RMG has actually gone from the B quadrant or business to the I quadrant. And it actually functions as an investment for me at this point. My heart's still there. My passion's still there. I still love building people through that. But it's been an interesting journey. And when I'm teaching, the seventh level for so many years, right? And Jesse, I know, back in the day, we're kind of all trying to figure this thing out. Like, the goal was to get to the seventh level. And I think we all kind of grew up a little bit over the years and realized, like, no, that's what's possible if you want to go that way. And so I was able to watch a lot of people kind of try to get to this seventh level place. And the reality is they weren't even happy doing it, right? It wasn't what they wanted. And so I started when I go around, I teach, I say, look, the reason I'm so happy with my business and with my life is it's my business and my life. Right? Like, I've set the sails, I've set the course, and I'm not trying to sail to your island. I'm sailing to mine, and I'm super cool with that. So don't sail to my island, right? Like, there's a couple of you that might want to go there, and it's a pretty cool place. And so just giving people the freedom, like, look, build your real estate business to where it's massively profitable. You get to do the things that you love every day, within, you guys get, still business things are hard. But if you want to take that and dump all that money into income properties or other businesses or hard money or whatever, figure out what the end of the rainbow looks like for you and go there. Don't go where I'm going. Right?
Yeah, I want to say that when we were coming up, that seventh level was this mythical kingdom. It was kind of like Studio 54. Like if you got in, you didn't know what to expect when you got there, and you might not like it even when you get there. And the people that we saw that actually went seventh level, I don't know one of them that stayed there. You know what I mean? Like, It seemed like they all had to come back into the business. They all, like, they had it for a minute or two, and I don't know if when some just faded away. And I'm sure it worked for some people, but we just didn't hear from those people as much. But
yeah,
I think it was something to chase. It's something we probably sought and chased a little too hard, when really we wanted aspects of the seventh level life, which is freedom and autonomy and wealth, right?
Sure, yeah.
But it's like we didn't know what was behind the door. We were just going to get that exclusivity. We wanted the black card that said seventh level members.
No, that's exactly what happened, right? And it happened again. It was kind of like one of those unintentional things that it just happened to be that path for me, with my mission to build people, it happened to work really, really well, because this idea of constantly getting yourselves out of a job means that you create a vacuum. You create a problem, which is that you need more people to kind of backfill into what you've built. And I think one of the issues is people didn't necessarily want to go there. The other issue is when you're going somewhere, there's 2 points that really matter: where I'm starting and where I'm going. And once you get there, what's the next thing I'm going to go to? So I think people, they got to this mythical seventh level and they're like, I arrived. And then they're impatient, they're driven, they want to do big things. And they just won a really small game. Right? They won the game, and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, I'm a champion of the world. And then they look around, they're like, no, I'm a retired baseball player after like 2 years.
So is it more true then that instead of actually being so focused on the seventh level aspect, were you more focused on what can I do to build this particular person, and then you moved from person to person and it happened? Or did you have that seventh level end game goal and you just discovered that you loved building people?
At the time, I think I had a little bit of the seventh level in-game goal in mind, but it was super dysfunctional, right? It wasn't like that was the prize. It was the prize, and somehow it just had happened to align with the fact that what I love spending my time doing was building people, and that at some point requires you to get out of the way. And so I'd get out of the way, and then I would go into this. I remember one day, Annie, who took over the company, I met with her for a coaching conversation, and I said, hey, what's the most important thing that I can do for you? And she said, man, I'm really glad you asked this. And so it was like a January. And she said, you can stop taking listings. You're terrible. You get in the way. You don't follow your own processes, and you're a problem. And so I said, fair enough. I have a listing appointment tomorrow. It'll be the last one that I ever take. And it was. And so then I wake up that next day and I have no idea who I am. Right? Like I was the listing agent of the team, and I did good. At least I thought I did, until I got fired. And, and all of a sudden I wake up and I'm the CEO of my company, and I don't know what that means. I don't know how to have a productive day. I don't really even know what to do with my day. And so one of the things as you progress in your business and your life is whatever is next, you've never been there before. And you have to kind of be prepared to be a rookie, and then a rookie, and then a rookie, and a rookie. And that's the results are great. The process isn't pleasant. It sucks.
Yeah, I feel like that's what we've experienced, Jesse and I, together over the last 3. And it took me a while to get used to it, because coming from other jobs where that was not the case, there was no new iteration. Like this business is so. You said it just perfectly. Like you have to be open to the fact that you might not know what you're doing next year, or what you're doing now is not what you're going to be doing next year. And real estate might be our business right now, but heck, we could be doing something totally different in 2020. And
sure.
And that's the exciting part about it. But it's also, I think, I also sometimes feel like, how can we, what does success really look like then? You have to be really happy with where you're at in the moment. And it's taken me some time. I think I'm still getting used to that.
Yeah, that's those of us who are sociopaths, right? Like all of us are like driven, gotta go. If we don't stop in the moment and enjoy it, you let a lot of life pass you by. I know Jesse is a big fan of going to concerts, and I love that, right? Like, you're going to miss the next like 16 weekends in a row because of this big project you're building. Yeah, but once you build it, you're going to miss the next 16 weekends in a row because of the next thing you're going to build. Mm-hmm. Right. And it's just, it becomes madness, and there is no pot of gold at the end of that rainbow. All there is being present in the moment, doing the best job, like experiencing the gifts that we have that we're able to bring, and celebrating along the way, which is hard sometimes for us to do, right? Because you always see all the things that don't work, the things that are broken, the things that aren't on goal and on pace. And then of course you compare yourselves against the person who's on stage saying, hey, look, everything's perfect. And you're like, man, that is not true. Like, you're a hot mess just like the rest of us.
Yeah. What's that saying? Comparison is the thief of joy. Isn't that the thing?
Yeah. Oh,
man. That's something I've been, that my brain like pulls out every once in a while recently. Because it's so easy to do that.
Oh, it is. It absolutely is. Yeah. Well, and this idea of, what is success? The definition I adopted a couple of years ago was success is the progressive realization of a worthy goal. Right. And so there's the idea of I'm in the process of succeeding because I'm moving towards something that, based off of my mission and my vision and my values and my beliefs, I say this is worthy. And so the fact that I'm moving in that direction, making progress, that is success. So I can wake up every day and have these micro failures and macro success because I'm on mission.
Reed, how do you stay so balanced? And here's why I say this. In comparison, when I was coming up and when I was, people were telling me, or they were remarking on my success, and there was a normal conversation that happened, it really got to me because I felt like a fraud, like it was imposter syndrome, right? Because because it is an ongoing process, and it didn't take me 18 months to succeed, and that's what everyone acts like. Everyone acts like, oh, you showed up, you're here, you're successful. Tell us how to do that. Tell us what it's like.
Yeah.
And the reality is like, hey man, I don't know. I put my head down, I did some work, and I still have a lot of work to do. And so feeling like I had already arrived actually killed a lot of things inside of me. You know what I mean? Like, it killed a lot of desire, and it kind of made me question a lot of things that I hadn't ever thought to question, because I was just putting my head down and doing the work at the time.
Yeah.
So I like in your quote that it's a progressive movement, right? It's not a destination that you end up at the end. Yeah. Right? It's a process.
Yeah, there were a couple, and certainly I'm not there yet. I do pretty good with this. There were a couple pretty big defining moments for me just in my mindset. The first one was it's probably 5 or 6 years ago. I woke up one morning and I just had this overwhelming impression that and this light bulb went off, and that is, so we get programmed that there are, all when we watch sports on TV, or we go to a concert, or we watch a movie, there's like this, it's an hour and it's done, or it's, there's a buzzer at the end. And so all of these things that have accomplishment and goals attached to them have this end. And I woke up one day and I realized that's actually not how anything in life works. Right? There's an end, and you don't know what it is. Like there's going to be a day where we're all breathe our last, right? But we don't know what that day is. Apart from that, everything is just a progress of where I was to an eventual future. And so everything in my life that I put as a deadline or a goal, all they are is they're just steps in a direction that I don't know what the end is going to be. And for me, what it did is I just chilled the heck out, right? When I realized, if I don't hit my goals this year, the world's going to end. I'm going to feel shame and guilt and, all that stuff. All of a sudden, I'm like, time out. Who said 1 year is anything, right? It's just this marker along the way that says I'm still moving towards wherever I'm going. And so I just started waking up and realized all I actually have to do is do a little better today than I did yesterday. All I have to do is just take another step forward. And for me, as simple as that seemed, it just freed me up, because the idea of well, even like going back to like the idea of a seventh level, the idea of arrival in this world, if you can get rid of the idea of I've arrived in every area of your life, you're going to be happier. And you're going to be more functional, I think, right? Because I mean, think about, if you're married, you have a significant other, you like, man, I logged 2 good weeks of relationship building with this person. Boom, check the box, I'm done. Is that really how that works?
It's not actually, because Margaret and I, we were at lunch the other day, and Margaret had made a decision recently to put herself out there and start dating more. And so the bartender, she goes, what's new with you guys? And Margaret goes, I'm dating. And I go, I'm sitting next to her, and I put my head in my hands because she's not actually dating yet, but she had made the decision to start dating, and she was so excited about the prospect of it that she just launched out, I'm dating. And then the waitress was like, oh, really? What's his name? And oh no, I'm not dating anyone yet.
But it's happening.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, it's exactly
I think that's such a true concept of the whole idea of like not being so focused on I've arrived, like I've completed this part of my journey, or like, because then it's just kind of the ever evolving way, I think, is a much better way to do it. And I would say that we're constantly being told that that's not the way to do it. Like constantly, I'm seeing on social media or in the news and in different books and things that it's always like, you should be starting something now, or if you haven't arrived yet, like it'll happen. It's like some magical moment, and it's not true. And I think it's hard to stay focused on the fact that it should be constantly evolving.
Yeah, arrival, I think, is the biggest, it's one of the biggest thieves of joy. And I think it's one of the biggest thieves of actual success, right? Like, there's no relationship that you have that's functional that will arrive. They will not arrive with your spouse, your kids, your coworkers. Those relationships will always be growing. If your business comes to an end, like you one day you wake up and you're like, I'm retired, I'm not working anymore. That arrival is really problematic, right? So my definition of work is what I do to add value to the world, right? I have recreation. I don't do that to add value to the world. I do that for me, for my family. I sleep, right? Like, because we all have to sleep. And then the rest of my time is how I add value to the world, which we call work, whether you get paid for it or not. So think about the mindset of this, right? Like, I wake up one day and I say, I am no longer adding value to the world. What just happened? Like, that arrival is going to mess you up, right? So you're never going to arrive. Get over it. Walk into that relationship and smile and just realize I'm gonna contribute more in this relationship today, and I have no expectation of it being done. You'll be happy.
I love how you have your own dictionary. You're like the you're like the Nick Nolte of Coeur d'Alene.
I think I've written down like 5 definitions so far. Reed's definitions.
Yeah, I'm like this Webster guy. Like, that's not it. That's not it. I'll just play by my own.
I want to ask you about the people, because I think what's interesting about the fact that you have actually pretty much removed yourself from the business, from RMG, is gotta be for 100%. Like, I can't even talk anymore about the people that you have doing the work and doing. So what have you done differently that other leaders have not done to be able to remove yourself?
Yeah, there's two things. The first one is, especially early on, you can't jump in and save the day. And what that means is when you're training people and you want them, they've shown that they're talent and you want them to go to a really high level, there's this period of time where they're doing things really well and they're going to screw up. And when they screw up, it's not going to be cheap, right? It's not going to be cheap for you. It's not going to be cheap for them. And I watched so many people. I was talking to a few friends who were scratching their heads saying, what's the differing factor here? And we all kind of came to the conclusion that when you get to that period of time, people that continue to trend people into leadership positions behind them and grow those people, they pull out a wad of cash and they just light it on fire during this period of time. And so you look at it and you're like, this is going to cost me $4,000. And you just, and it sucks. And you want to jump in and save the day because you can, right? Like, you've been doing this for 16 years, you know what to do. But you start to realize, I can jump in and I can save the commission or whatever it is, or I can pay $4,000 for this person to never have to learn this again. And so there was a long period of time where there's probably, I probably lost $100,000, $200,000 if you look at it that way, with people learning really hard lessons and you just not jumping in. And of course that turns out to be a huge investment, right? Because they do learn those lessons and they continue. And that's actually how we learned those lessons. We just, because we were entrepreneurs, because we're the tip of the spear, we just happen to write the checks for our own stupidity, right? And you talk to people and they're like, oh, these people mess all this stuff up. You're just more aware now, right? So that was one of them. The second thing is to create an environment that is friendly to conflict. And this is something that, if you're familiar with the conversation around conflict, which I know both of you guys are, to most people, the word conflict carries so much baggage, right? From their childhood and all these things. And so you get people in a professional environment and they're unwilling to challenge ideas. They're unwilling to stand up for what they think and what they believe. They're unwilling to fight, right, over ideas, to have a high clash of ideas and a low clash of ego. And so,
as we like to fight.
Yeah, it just and I just learned over the years that if it's your way or the highway, people that don't choose the highway still don't show up very good, right? They're kind of along for the ride. They have no intention on taking the driver's seat from you, and you really need people to take the driver's seat. And so over the years, going into meeting after meeting after meeting, where people disagree with your ideas, trigger you, and being willing to just suck it up and look for the best answer instead of your answer. That was something I originally did with Annie, and then it was Blake and Annie and Emily, and now the second layer of leaders and all the way down into our organization. So if you walk into a team meeting, like just a 10-minute stand up in the morning, you might hear somebody say something as a leader, and somebody, one of the agents say, hey, that's a really stupid idea, and here's why. Right? Like right to their face in front of everybody. And everybody's like, oh yeah, that's a really dumb idea. And then like a fight ensues, right? Like everybody's like, no. And then all of a sudden a better idea forms. And then everybody gets behind that idea, whether it was the original idea or usually not. And so just breeding it into the culture to where, and I'll tell people who are brand new to the company, I'll pick up the phone, call them, and I'll say, here's the deal. You're one of only 5 people that haven't been here for that long, which means you have a unique perspective. If you sit in the back of the room and you don't talk and you don't bring your genius to the table, you're not being a good team member, and you're not actively participating in this tribe. I don't expect you to be here for a while and then speak up. I expect you to speak up. You're a professional and you were chosen to be here for a reason. So those are the 2 things really that I think we've been able to really build off. And then of course, with conflict comes the need to build relationships that are conflict resilient. And over the course of time, that becomes huge too.
It's interesting, this conversation about conflict, because I think Margaret and I are good about talking about tools and resources, maybe more so than problems, like conflict. Like we'll talk about fierce conversations 6 times a day, right? And that is a conversation about conflict, but we're talking more about tools and resources, and we don't always identify the enemy in the room. Yeah. And so something I'm realizing that I'm trying to be better at is I read all these books and I use all these resources to be better at specific things. But I think sometimes I'm trying to be better in general versus being specifically better at things that I know will further my business.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's the hardest thing about conflict beyond just having a skill set to deal with conflict is the harsh truth about conflict is anytime there's conflict present, there's the opportunity to rift a relationship. There's an opportunity if you're dealing with any other human being on the face of the earth, there's the chance that they can pull the ripcord. Right. And the deeper the level of conflict, the closer to the heart or the closer to the core of a person or the business that conflict is, the more risk you take with somebody saying, I'm out. Right. And so we don't have conflict at home because we're scared of that. We don't have conflict at the office because we're scared of that. We'll have conflict and then we'll go to a certain point. But after a certain point, it's like, I don't know that I can trust you to go here and actually say these things because you might leave me, right? And the thought of that scares me enough that I will limp for the next 10 years, right? I don't have to actually fix this leg problem as long as I can walk, because if this goes sideways, I might lose my leg altogether, right?
Have you been in situations where you've had to walk away from a relationship after conflict?
Yeah. Like after I learned some of my first conflict skills, like the first 2 or 3 times I was brave enough to go and have the conflict, it dissolved the relationship. That was fun, right?
What'd you learn? What'd you learn from that?
It should have been dissolved months before.
Yeah, right.
Right. I mean, that was the deal.
That's one of the conversations that we have on this podcast quite a bit, actually, is kind of this. Well, the conversation is in regards to having boundaries so that, and which helps you delineate which people should and should not be in your life.
Sure.
Versus owning your own stuff and letting other people own their own stuff and letting time figure it out in between. Which of those, if those were 2 sides of an argument, which side would you take? The need for boundaries or letting time figure out who's on your side or not?
Jeez, that's a tough that's a tough one. I have an emotional tendency to run to things when I feel like I'm out of relational alignment. So for me, being out of relational alignment with somebody is something, it's pretty much the only thing that will keep me up at night. I just don't lose sleep over much. I haven't for forever. But if I have a rift in a relationship, I will tend to run to that. Now, that doesn't always mean that I get resolution, but I'm pretty obsessive about it. And so I have a bias that direction. And when I say that, I don't want to say it like it's a good thing. I don't want you to misunderstand that. It's a compulsion. And I don't necessarily think compulsions are all that good. So I have a compulsion to not avoid relational conflict. When it's things that aren't like a rift of relationship, but it's standards not being met, or it's things in the business, I have a tendency to try to think out how this is going to play out, right? Like what's the actual cost of this? What's the cost of this in morale? What's the cost of this in money? And sometimes my answer is, it's actually more profitable for everybody involved to let this play out for a while, right? Like we don't have that person's replacement. They're at 70% of where they are, but 0% is not good right now. Yeah. And so I have a tendency to kind of let those things play out. And in the past, I've let those play out way too long, to where the intangibles start creating massive deficits inside the business. You hold on to people too long, you're encouraging them, but you're not holding them to a standard. You're just kind of loving on them. And that has not played out very well.
That makes, I'm going to go random for a second. So that makes me think of Chernobyl. I don't know if you watch TV at all, Reed, but there's a HBO 5-part miniseries on Chernobyl. The disaster at Chernobyl. Does everybody know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah. I've not seen that show.
Do you know what Chernobyl is?
Yes.
Well,
that's where I got my third eye.
So. No, but it is, and listen, it's a super hard show to watch, because you're basically seeing people melt before your eyes from radiation sickness. But in the whole thing of it, what compelled me to keep watching it is I wanted to understand, how does this happen? How does a disaster of this epicness happen? And really, there's a analogy to business in the answer, in that Russia tried to do things cheaper. They had a culture of dishonesty, right? Where they would say things that weren't true to everyone else because it would make Russia look better. And so they had a whole culture of dishonesty inside of a scientific community where you can't have dishonesty in science. Like you shouldn't, right? Especially when you're talking about a nuclear reactor. And
yeah, it's kind of a big deal.
And so in the end, you have these people that are being forced. You have basically middle management being forced by higher management to hit a goal, to hit it like a sales goal. But they're scientists at a nuclear reactor. And in an effort to meet this sales goal, they basically run over the top of all the safeguards, over the top of all their employees, and say, do it, because otherwise it's going to cost you your job, right? Yeah. And in the end, for their lack of vision, their lack of clarity, and then on top of that, a culture of dishonesty, what ends up happening is they almost kill 50 million people. Like the full effect of Chernobyl, had it reached the water supply, which it was in danger of doing, it would have affected 50 million people. Wow. And it was interesting for me to hear this and think about it. because when you talk about the unknown intangibles in business, where you start to see them where you let things be and you don't step in, right? And this is why I'm drawing an analogy to Chernobyl, is they had a safeguard in place. They had a safeguard in place that if all hell breaks loose, you hit this button. If you hit this button, we'll all be fine, right? But we're going to try to do everything possible not to hit this button. And it just so happened that because of their cheapness and because of their culture of dishonesty, they didn't know that by hitting the button, they would actually make the problem worse. And they would make the nuclear reactor explode, which no one even knew was possible. And so by ignoring the issue or many issues over an entire system, what ended up happening was, instead of the safeguard keeping things safe, it made something totally inevitable, like unimaginable, happen to the demise of the everything, right?
Yeah.
And so when you talk about that, I realized that by not addressing things and by letting things happen, all of a sudden you'll see things flare up that you didn't even know were there.
Oh yeah. Something that John Maxwell said a long time ago. I had a chance to kind of go see a thing. I think it was in one of his books too, but he said, like, hard conversations are like a credit card. The cheapest price you're going to pay is the price you pay today. Every day after there, it builds interest. Right. And at some point, these kind of things become, so talking about the first couple of these conversations I have, one of them, by the time I had the conversation, I was probably 2 weeks from the entire team leaving because of this person. Right. So me not having that conversation almost cost me my entire company, 3 years at that point, worth of work. Right. I mean, just the stakes are super, super high when you're dealing with these kind of things. And then when we look at it, it's not because we don't have the skill set, because we can go get a skill set. We can go talk to somebody pretty easily. We can read a book. A lot of times it comes down to just the bravery to deal with it in the moment. And that, of course, is one of the hardest things, because it triggers all of our internal stuff. Right. If you have abandonment issues, or you have, for me, loyalty is something. When I feel like there's disloyalty, that is something that, or I feel like I get blindsided. Those are, being blindsided for me is a core fear. Like I just, I'm a little bit obsessive about not allowing myself to be blindsided. And some of the skills that I've built around that is just awesome. Some of it's still pretty dysfunctional. Right.
Yeah. Well, I think I know what you're talking about when you talk about your need for resolution in conflict, how that kind of trumps everything for you. Like, you're a little too proactive about it, probably. Yeah. Margaret can sit here. She's giving me a knowing look right now, because part of our relationship was me being less demanding about resolution and giving her time to process, versus me going, okay, I'm here now, let's fix this. Yeah. I got better stuff to do, like, let's get this over with and move on. Part of that's true. Part of that's necessary sometimes, but it doesn't negate the fact that she needs time to process. And we have to find a happy compromise that makes it effective for both of us. Yeah,
it runs in the family.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
We're impatient.
I think what I like about that, though, is I think it also is a testimony to any partnership. Like, I'm sure there's people in your company that have experienced the same thing, that were on my end of the spectrum as well. But that's kind of the cool thing about it, is because he was so obsessive about wanting to solve everything super fast, and I pushed back against it so hard. I think we found a really happy medium where now I can resolve things faster than I used to, because a lot of that was useless to really wait on. I had to learn to be braver, faster. And then on the flip side, he also learned that waiting a little while, sometimes the problem would solve itself, or I would take care of it rather than him having to. And so I think that's also like you talked about, building a business with multiple people. So you can go so much further with more people, and at the same time, it's so much harder. And that's why I think so few people can do it successfully, is that finding the ability to have conversations like this and keep the loyalty, keep the transparency, all of that at the same time is really an interesting challenge.
Yeah.
But one that I've kind of become obsessed with, because I think if you can do that, that's the true success in being a human, like being someone that really can work with people and find the leadership and the ability to do that and teach other people to do that.
Yeah.
There's a nervousness that comes with building a team that I think is similar to becoming a real estate investor, where you do all this research and you go to all the classes and you buy the books and the guides and the manuals, and then you do the process and you experiment and you make your first hire, and then all your hopes and dreams are on that hire.
Oh,
right?
sure.
And then you're like,
Yeah.
oh, thank God I did it. I finally, it's like an investor who bought their first real estate investment and they think they're done. You know, they're like, okay, well,
Oh yeah,
I'm an investor
they made $35,000.
Yeah. I'm ahead of 99% of the other people who have never bought a house, so I'm good, you know. And it's like, no, you've just alluded to you're playing with fear, and fear's winning, right? Because fear lost the battle, but now it's going to win the war because you're not stepping up.
Yeah.
And I think people do that with team members. They hire that one person. Okay. They put all their hopes and dreams on that one candidate. Going, okay, I'm done. I did my job. Now do yours.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, it just goes back to like there is no end, there's no arrival. Like these are relationships and they don't ever stop. Like they, you know, the other thing is,
oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say the other thing is, you know, that I've had to learn is because what we build in our businesses, we're usually really passionate about, right? We put our heart and soul, blood, sweat, and tears into it. And somebody moving on, even if it's for really good reasons, can just flat out feel like a total betrayal. Right. And working through that emotionally, where, you know, two paths naturally can go different directions, and being emotionally okay with that when it's inside your business, that's a hard one. That's a hard one for me.
Have you ever had the opportunity to hire someone back that left your team, or to be in a professional relationship with them again?
Yeah. So, on the agent side, there's been a couple of times where that's come back around and just hadn't been a good fit for one reason or another. But several of those people have actually come back into my professional relationship where we've been able to work with them as a vendor, or, you know, they're doing something else, or I'm sitting on a board for them, and, you know, vice versa. So that's been really cool. And there was a period of time where I just thought, well, that's never going to happen. Like, you know, all these people, and you know, we didn't, you know, it's not like we left and it went nuclear. It was always, you know, very gracious, and just, you know, not always, but, you know, 90% of the time is very gracious and all that. But deep down, I'm like, you're gone, right? Like, I have people over here that are committed and loyal, and all my time and energy is going to go to them. So you, like, you know, bye, Felicia. You know, and so you start to get to a place where, like, yeah, your time and energy should go to your people, and these people, you know, don't necessarily need to be cut off.
Okay, so let me ask you this then, from the words of someone I know you admire, Gary Keller, who says that we should treat our business like a market center. If we treat our business like a market center, and you and I are team leaders of that market center, in face of like the current cultural climate in the real estate industry, with competition coming from Compass, EXP, other businesses, other startups, other disruptors, like, don't you see the benefit though of like treating people like there is an open door to come back to? Because people are going to satisfy their curiosity. They might get pulled one way. Like, for instance, if I had a conversation with a team leader recently where I'm like, well, this competitor is going to write them a check to come over. And I'm like, are you willing to do that? And she said, no. I go, then what are you upset about? Like, do you want them to come back? And if so, then be gracious in their departure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we've definitely, yes. So I absolutely think that. I think you have to be gracious in the departure. A lot of the things that I struggle with are on the inside, right?
Oh, for sure.
You know, like it's not as gracious inside as it is outside.
You might keep score. We all do. We all keep score because it's our business, and we're not getting that, right? If someone else gets $1, it's $1 we're not getting. Like, we gave up that $1 before they ever even saw it, right?
Yeah, there's the dark things inside need to stay inside and hopefully get whittled down over time. Really, like, you're just like, I hope you do great. There's gonna be a horse head in your bed tonight, and maybe you'll end up at the bottom of the river, but have a great time, right? Like, I mean, you know, like, not that you ever say that or do that.
You'll appreciate this. We threw a going away party. Like, Margaret came to me. This person was leaving. She's like, okay, we're going to throw a going away party. And I go, why? Like, why? Just let them leave. Like, don't even bother. And then we're at the going away party, and I'm getting a rash of shit from this person. And she's upset about, and she has a totally unique perspective that is not at all my perspective at all. And if I'd had a chance to talk to her, she wouldn't have the same perspective. And I'm at a going away party where I'm paying for her to leave my company, and she's giving me crap, right? Like it could have been better. I could have handled things better. And I think I finally paid the bill and just walked out of there without saying anything. But
those are tough. And, like there's all the movie moments where people do what you always wanted to do. But in the real world, there's a lot of repercussion for that. And being, social awareness, of course, I think is a kind of a key trait. The other one is just, as you lead and as you build something, you just learn to take stuff on the chin. Like you flat out, you take abuse and you take things. And the interesting thing, mindset wise, has happened for me is, there's Jocko Wilkins and Leif Babin, they wrote that book, Extreme Ownership, right? And yeah, super great book. And a couple of years ago, I just adopted this mindset or this idea that everything's my fault. Like if Jesse and I have a conversation that doesn't go well, and it's so clear that he's out of reality, my mindset is I have never had a human interaction in my life that I was 100% perfect. Therefore, I have DNA on this issue. And I can take ownership for the fact that this was a failed conversation. And over the years, I've just built big enough shoulders where I don't need you to understand that you're to blame. I can take that on, say, this one's on me. And then, here's what we're doing next, or, here's how we're moving forward, or here's the standard, and then draw a line in the sand, and that person still has to perform or go away or whatever. But and what happened in my mind around this was I refuse to give my power to another person or another situation. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's ultimately what blame shifting is me choosing to go from being an empowered individual to a disempowered individual. All right, gosh, I'm so sorry, guys. Traffic was terrible today. I just gave my personal power to traffic. Like what kind? That's just crazy. I could say, guys, I didn't account for traffic today. That's on me. I am so sorry. I just took the power back and I said, I'm here. The consequences are what they are, but I own it. And over the course of time, you realize I can do that and I can stay an empowered individual. And that's much better than even somebody look in your eyes and say, you know what? You're right. I was wrong. Like who needs that, right?
Yeah, we need more people like you, Reed. I like that concept a lot. No, and I totally agree with it because you do realize that you're not in control of everybody else. Mm-hmm. And so we've had I don't know, have you read Unfuck Yourself by Gary John Bishop?
I have, yeah.
So we had him on our podcast, and it's a good one to listen to if you get a chance, because it was we were having a conversation about boundaries, and he's like, well, it's up to you, isn't it? And I was like, he gave me ownership back over this. He's like, well, it's up to you. It's up to you. Do you want to feel this way or don't you? And if you do feel this way, you don't have control over the situation. If you decide to let it go, that's you having control. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, okay, thanks, Scottish.
Yeah, it's a lot of responsibility.
Scottish Dr. Phil just read my mail.
He read both of our mail that day. But I think the biggest thing is most people don't want responsibility. It's much easier to blame. It's much easier to be a victim. And when it comes to people leaving a company, I think I'd been in enough jobs previous to this one that I'd seen it happen where when someone's leaving a place, it's kind of, even though I've never had kids, I've paid attention to what people do with their kids and with my parents. And when you have kids that are going off into the world for the first time and leaving the home or whatever it is, there's a lot of mixed, weird feelings that happen, and they can show,
sure.
I forget what the word is, they can show themselves in all sorts of weird ways. And I think when people leave companies, or especially teams, small teams like this, weird emotions come to the surface that are not understandable, kind of like what we experienced there. And so I've learned that, like you said, to take ownership of that, or just to say goodbye as graciously as possible, knowing that they could very well refer us business in the future, or they will be someone who will talk about us in the future. And I want that to be positive. I want them to remember all the time that we poured into them, all the time, and not
Sure.
just money, but time, money, resources, energy, positivity. My God, we give everything to people. And
Yeah.
so I think to tie that bow on the end there, like we talk about tying the bow with clients, it's much like that with employees or people that we work with. And as hard as it is in the moment when you feel like someone's so ungrateful or so you feel so misunderstood, I think that's the struggle as the owner that I've witnessed Jesse have to experience. And so what he experiences, even though I'm not an owner, I have learned to experience myself being in partnership with him with this, because I for sure I've taken things personally and realized what a waste of time and energy that is.
Oh yeah.
With all the different things, it's like leaving the nest. It's like someone who's leaving the nest and is like, they're happy to go and do something else, but at the same time, then they're also angry.
I know.
Oh yeah.
We wanna encourage you to leave the nest. Just don't shit in the nest on your way
Yeah,
out.
yeah.
You know, like, can you wait until you leave the nest and then do that?
Oh my gosh. We years ago we started seeing this pattern. We had a couple people that left. One the job that we hired this person for, the growth trajectory, she just was like, that's not my happy place. I want to do this job. And that actually caused us to have to like part ways, really on good terms. Like, she had a job lined up. It was exactly what she wanted to do. And then somebody else was moving out of state. So it's like two situations that we weren't parting on bad terms. And the last 2 weeks that they were there with us, our culture has always been really great, like just super, super awesome. And all of a sudden we started watching them like almost like pick fights to make it easier to leave, right?
Yeah,
they would just say things, they would poke at other people, they would do things that were completely out of character for them. And we're like, what just happened? So going back to what Margaret said, like we would sit them down like a week out or, whatever. And we'd surround them and just affirmations. Here's what we love about you. This, and they would just start bawling because they've been acting like, like a spoiled brat teenager for like, a week. And it's just like, you know what? All of these things are just very temporal. They're going to go away. And they're gonna think about all the time that they had with us. So, yeah.
Well, Reed, I want to honor your time with us. Please tell my nieces and nephews hello for me. I look forward to being in your area soon and hopping on the boat. You still have the pontoon, or do you have a new boat?
We have a surf boat now. So we'll go.
They're doing 6 a.m. stuff in the water.
I know, I saw that. I'm gonna sign up for the 6 p.m. stuff on the water.
Okay. Deal.
All right, Reed, we appreciate you being here with us today and taking some time out of your valuable day to talk with us.
Of course, my pleasure, guys.
Thanks, man.
Take care.
Margaret.
Jesse.
We're on the other side of this
Dylan.
interview. What did you learn?
What did I learn? I learned that Reed Moore has his own dictionary. I wrote down 5 different words that he redefined for me, and I've actually never really had a one-on-one conversation with Reed, so I have to say I could totally see how that podcast we might have to do like a part 2 at some point, because we could talk for a couple hours. I love his ideas on leadership. I love how passionate he is about it. I love that he shared the mistakes that he made.
The thing about Reed that is impressive in my mind is he thinks about this stuff all the time. Mm-hmm. He has to. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, there's no way he'd have these thoughts in his head. Mm-hmm. So, like, I'm amazed when I'm talking to him, and he has all these parallels and all insights. And you don't just have that from experience. You actually have to think about it as well. Yeah. So I know that he's consumed with leadership and thoughts of it. Mm-hmm. And this guy goes on Facebook Live randomly when he has a good idea, which is often, and just shares it with people. Yeah. And I love that about him. Yeah. So.
No, I thought it was a very, he brought up some interesting points that I wrote out. One of my favorite things that he talked about was the idea of the arrival and how that can be a thief of joy and success. And I hadn't really thought of it that way before. The idea of
arrival of success, like success.
Well, now I've arrived, or I've arrived next year, or now that I've accomplished this, I finally arrived. And it's like, no, you've never really arrived. You're constantly a progress and working on yourself. So I loved the way he put that.
What else did you like?
I loved all the discussion we had on conflict, and how conflict is such a necessary part. And it did make me think about, like you had said, that we talk a lot about the resources we have for conflict. And I thought about different ways that we could incorporate more conflict. I think they have more people in their organization right now too than we do, obviously. And I don't know that I would want to welcome conflict every single morning. Like, would it be a really valid use of our time if we discussed an idea every morning, then we were like, oh, I don't like that. Let's discuss this, weed it out.
I don't think they do that every morning. I think there's time to come together and be like, all right, here we go.
Yeah.
I want to hear everyone's stupid ideas.
Yeah. And I feel like we do that. And I feel like we're open. Absolutely. We have open discussions at our team meetings weekly about, and if anybody disagrees with something, we talk about it. I don't know that we do open brainstorming that often.
No.
But
we should do it more. Mm-hmm. Well, we all get obstinate in our own way. There's times when you get obstinate, and I'm like, oh, here we go.
Mm-hmm. It's the best.
We
time
did
of
that
your
one
week.
on the podcast where we talked through it.
Mm-hmm.
It was after our interview with Tim.
Tim Long. Yeah. No, this was
Which
an
I'm
enjoyable
surprised, by the
podcast.
way, that more people didn't talk about that. Because I know a few people really got it, that conversation, and talked about it, but I thought it'd have a bigger effect.
Yeah, I'm finding, and I don't know if that's if this is because a lot of our audience right now are admin. I don't know if it really truly is. I know, like, we have a great listenership, but I'm finding that admin are not always the best at sharing their opinion or their thoughts, or they have to really be encouraged to. So I've been trying to make a point to talk to our listeners more about sharing what they think about it, and like if they have an opposing point of view, let us know. Like, speak about it. But for some reason, I agree. I thought that episode was really interesting. A lot of different points came up and not as much talk about it.
Whereas in this case, I think Reed gives us a lot to think about and talk about. Mm-hmm. And and you and I are good, so we don't have to have an awkward conversation, I don't think.
Right now?
Yeah.
After Reed?
Yep.
I don't think so.
No. I'm just saying sometimes all of us make it hard. Sometimes all of us make it hard to talk about an idea.
Oh, yeah. We're all human. Totally.
We all get rigid in our own way.
Mm-hmm. Different things come up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. No, I really enjoyed
that
conversation.
You and I. Hiring, I would say.
That's a fun one. We are definitely polar opposites sometimes.
And I don't understand it. It's like I don't fully understand it.
What do you think it is?
I don't know.
Tell me. You do know. You have
Well,
something in your head.
I feel like you are in opposition to the process, and that confuses me.
In opposition to the process?
Like it's something you don't want to do.
True.
Well, that doesn't help.
No.
That doesn't help the process at all.
I mean, I don't. We have to hire. We've got no other options. What this has helped me to realize, though, is that I will never want to be a full-time recruiter or hiring person. I love talking to people. I love conversing with people. I will always love conversation, but I don't love conversation with everyone. And recruiting and this is what I love about learning about myself. Like, I learn what I don't like, and which helps me identify what I do want to do. And recruiting I feel like a hamster on a wheel, because you have to go through a lot of candidates to find, and when you find those golden nuggets, man, it's great, but that does not energize me. So, but it has to be done, because right now we need 2-3 more agents and we need another admin. So it has to be done. But yeah, I think we have different ways of reading people, which is also the beauty of why we work well together. But I think when it comes to hiring, we have different perspectives, which is not a bad thing. Like, it's good. If I want to sit at a table with someone and build a company with people, they talk about sitting around a table. You want to have people that have opposing points of view, because if we all agreed on everything all the time, we wouldn't be successful.
How about we agree just some of the time and see how that goes?
I mean, that is what we aim for. Absolutely. And sometimes both of us, you and I both have to just kind of like...
No, this is my point. You are like well known for having a positive attitude on just about everything, and except for this. This is like your one thing. You allow yourself not to have a positive
I wouldn't
attitude
say
from
that
the
I
jump.
don't have a positive attitude about this.
I would say that you let negativity become a factor more often than any other segment of your life.
Than any other? That's a pretty huge statement.
It's without. That's why we're talking about it. That's why I'm talking about it.
Well, I would say that I feel like it rests too much on my shoulders. Correct. And that's why, and ultimately, I would say honestly, like, I don't talk about as much as I could. I'm very select with what I talk about, because I don't want to have a bad attitude about anything. Of anybody else, just like you, have to be a leader. I have to be the person who's willing to pick up and do things that nobody else wants to do. And so, but I do feel like this often rests on my shoulders, and it's a weight that's really hard for me to bear. So when something does come out about it that's not negative, that's positive, not positive, but negative, or like, it's just because I've reached the end of my rope.
Right. So this is why I don't know if we should talk about it, in the sense that I think you're overwhelmed and you're going on vacation, and I want you to have that opportunity before I say, hey, well, here's what I mean. I think there's certain things that are solved by a vacation. And this might be one of those things. I don't know. But I would say that it's not your style to let anything trend towards the negative side. But you seem okay letting this trend to the negative.
I don't let anything. It just, some things do happen to Margaret Smith. Margaret's not the ever-evolving, bright light bulb of shining positivity.
I didn't say that. I said this is the one aspect where...
But I'm not letting anything happen. I'm not letting, I don't just let negativity seep through. When it seeps through, it's because it's there.
I know, but there's other areas of life that are not all positive.
Sure, yeah.
And we don't see that.
I don't know. I think I disagree with that. When it comes to finances and how, I've had a hard time with that, I think I talked openly about that. I think this one shines brightly to you for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, I just think it's the most consistent.
Okay. I don't know. Well, you don't necessarily like recruiting either, right?
It's draining. Yeah. I do part of it. I do my part that I feel like is necessary. And I have a hard time when it comes in the way of sales, which is a bad way of thinking because it's working on the business instead of in it, which is a good thing. And I think it could be a timing thing too. I think if we could restructure, listen, here's what we need to do. What we need to do is we need more people lead generating, or we need more people recruiting. That's it. Or both. But the reality is that you can't just pull me out of lead generation, which is the best part of my day. And if I'm going to recruit, I need to be alert and on point, right? I'm not going to talk about what happened this week, but we'll talk about it down the road. But I need to be alert. I want to show up. I want to give him 100% of my time and attention. That's hard for me to do on a good day, especially at the good part of a day, let alone we always do this after lunch, and that's a nightmare for me. I can't do that. No more. I can't do it anymore. I can't do after lunch recruiting.
The window's becoming smaller.
It is. Anyway.
What did you think about the conversation with Reed?
I said, I think he's I love talking to him because you can bring up anything and he'll have a thought on it, or a story or an opinion. And I've always celebrated that. I think having an opinion is one of the best things you can do to differentiate yourself from everybody else. And I don't know.
Do you think you and Reed operate similarly in how you lead and build?
You know what? I think in a lot of ways we do, in a lot of ways we don't. I look up to Reed in all the ways that I don't measure up to him and his leadership style. At the same time, I don't see behind closed doors. I don't know what he struggles with as much that I might excel at. I do as far as the leadership style goes, I think we lead with people. So we give people the benefit of the doubt. I think we see talent as an asset. And so I think we give back to our people, and I think we lead with autonomy. I think those are important comparisons between Reed and I. So, yeah, he's if you guys don't follow him on Facebook, you should, because he'll just hop on there sometimes.
Yeah, I forget what his little talks are called. Something like Leading Leaders or Leading with Leadership or something.
Yeah.
But he'll hop on with a whiteboard and just go to town.
Yeah, he does a good job.
Yeah.
So.
And I love his people, too. Emily Singleton and Marcy Weeks have become good friends of mine.
Oh, look at you doing the shout-outs.
Just doing the shout-outs, man.
Oh, my gosh.
I got to drop Emily Bean, too.
Name dropping like a Bravo celebrity.
Those are some standout people, though, that help lead his organization along with Annie and Blake. And
Oh, here you go again. Name dropping again.
Just name dropping. Get it out
My
there.
zipper's broke. God, I just realized
I think that's another real talk moment. Real talk.
my zipper won't stay up.
Oh, no. This is really bad. You might not be able to leave Studio North.
I don't want to leave Studio North.
It actually feels amazing
So
in
cold
here.
in here.
Yeah.
So good.
This is way better.
Margaret's office is a sweat box.
Maybe I could just move my stuff in here. Nobody would even know I was back
Can't
here.
we put Skype on that computer and then?
It'd be beautiful. We can.
Okay.
Yeah. We're on the same page. Here we are. We're on the same page. Wow. Here we go. Make note.
We had to work through that conflict. Thank you, everyone, for listening to Finally Clicked. We'll be back at you next week with another thought-provoking episode from Margaret Smith.
Jesse Moore.